different community, an organization called Cultus Éireann, which is involved with Irish and Irish American arts and cultural history, both in Dublin and throughout the Northern and the Republic of Ireland as well, and throughout America. They've got thousands of hours of audio and video field recordings, Cayley bands, whittlers, weavers, you name it, people talking about their life. So they're trying to develop a big project, and they asked us to do up a couple of hours of video that they happen to have as a demo. This is 2 hours. It's really not very good video. 2 hours from a Hall of Fame ceremony, the induction into the Northeast Region Hall of Fame of Irish cultural figures. But it has some music, and it has some dance, and it has some people talking and telling stories, so it gave us a way to approximate what an archive would look like. But we've developed a fairly elaborate coding tree here, and all I'll show you very, very quickly. Topic A we used for what's in it, topic B, who's doing it, and topic C is, let's say, broad themes. Text 1 is the names of the people or the things involved. So if topic A was, there are 164 clips here, it's just organized the whole archive by topic A. In other words, we have, if you want a treble jig and you want to see solo footwork, you click on it. And you're there. Topic 13, this topic, there are 13 clips there for biography. Well, that may be more than you want, so you bring up topic B, and you just have subdivided topic A into the subdivisions of topic B. So if we want biography of somebody who just inducted into the Hall of Fame, there's Larry Reynolds talking about members of his family. Or if you want, well, that's not so interesting. Here's anecdotes. Anecdotes about County Clare. We're beginning to work up codes so that if they had 5,000 hours, you could break it down by county. And here is a man named John Droney, who's a famous step dancer.
Who am I? From Bull Harbour in County Clare. Well, I guess you might say that I've been, I grew up in the middle of a Cayley band.
And you can continue to bring variables up here. If we brought up text sort 1 here, and if I'm up here in the music section, and I want to find Hall of Fame inductees, and here's Larry Reynolds, who's one of them. Okay. So, and basically one final thing is you can just move the variables around like that, and it sorts the whole archive out by a different order. So if you wanted to start with individuals, you would end up here. There are all the individuals mentioned. If you're interested in Kathy Mason, you'd find what we have about her in the other categories and so on. Point being, these things are breaking wide open. This is just one form. Howard's going to show you some unbelievably powerful stuff for handling large amounts of material. It's a very exciting moment we're at, and I just look forward to finding some ways to work with you all to, yeah, Howard?
What's it cost? Yeah, what is it cost to do that?
Well, it's actually, we're sort of just working on that. I mean, our process is almost entirely labor intensive. This is, oh, this is, yeah, the computer's not doing anything. That's me listening and saying that's a story about his family name. And it's not unlike transcribing. So we're coming in at about 12 hours per hour of documentation to fully work it up. The first few hours, it takes longer when you're developing the coding tree. After that, it gets shorter. But so these things are, you know, nothing's free in America, as he said, and everything takes work. Computers don't reduce work, they just displace the work, in this case, from the secretarial work of transcribing into a kind of content analysis that allows, I think would allow you to have students working here to really get into listening closely and finding out what's in this, building that into the access tools so that anybody coming to this archive, whether they're looking for names or Caruthersville, Missouri, or, you know, deeper concepts about identity, could find their way to illustrative material and then be able to use it. So, thanks very much.
and as Michael said, the whole indexing, that's really what takes a lot of the labor. It's the thing, the bottomless pit, I call it, of archiving. Now for some little artificial intelligence that still requires labor. The thing that Michael, his value a lot is really that he is an oral historian, because oral histories are typically sort of talking heads. So that's makes the transcript process even more important. While Professor Wackler is getting set up, I had actually a person who had worked with us for some time had sent me a short article that was written about the Infomedia Center at Carnegie Mellon. And I immediately called Professor Wackler, introducing myself, which I do a lot. And, said, and he just, I went on his website and looked and said, this looks exactly like what, we're looking for. And had sent him after, as he said last night, I was pretty persistent. Had sent him, he said he would process some of our interviews, so I sent him some of our interviews. And just this last fall, went to see his technology as I was thinking, I'm talking about this digital archive, how's it ever, what's actually really happening? And went out and saw his demonstration. He's worked for the last 8 years with money from the Department of Defense and the National Science Foundation with CNN footage. And I said to him, well, Professor Wackler, you're not going to get rid of me because I've just seen the mountaintop and I'm not going away. So I'll let him, take over. He cautions me that he is a technologist. So I've always wondered, well, what does that mean? Does it mean can I use it?
Right.
Do I have to start?
At the moment, even I can't use it.
So does it mean I have to start over again if we keep a test site? And so we've applied for a grant together, and he assures me that even if we don't get the grant for IMLS, which I'm hoping we get, that we'll work together. But the issue, I'm not sure we'll get settled on that because we lack the sort of high-powered servers that an institution like Carnegie Mellon has. While he's just getting set up, are there any questions that anyone has about anything that's been stated to date so far? For what? For which one? For Michael, what is the cost of?
Oh, it's actually the software is free. The video transfer has a minimal cost. So it's really the audio software is like $500. The video for a small collection ends up being about the same. So it's really not substantial. The real work is in doing it.
Yes. Yes.
They're very similar. As anyone that it with Avid as well, like the instruments and non-linear editing phase, and we're all putting on computers now, and it's putting these sessions in bins, and that's what it reminds me of. Final Cut is about $1,000, but the software is developed to edit the videos. If you want to expand on.
Right, but see, the thing that, Nicole, that Final Cut doesn't do is you can't, it's the transcripts. Yeah.
Well, that actually, yeah, we've been, it's one of the directions we're.
What's wrong?
Because the program and the
Huh? You got it?
I'm
No.
working with, it's much better than what the editors are using in terms of the cross-referencing capacity. And so ultimately, if you could, and we have time codes so that we can get it synced to the,
All that can merge together.
but it can be merged together in the production tool as well.
We tried, we actually had gone, because, you know, we're budget constrained, there's a program called Content that we had actually hired, let me just say this, a company called Archive Impact, and we had met them through this AMIA. And so they worked with us because we couldn't afford Virage. Virage, how much was yours? They told us 25,000, but...
Yeah, 25,000 to start, and then about 1,000 an hour. It's not quite that expensive. We figure in some cataloging with that.
Right. So because we couldn't afford that, there's a professor out of the University of Seattle, Washington, who had developed a program called Content. And Content was not for video. So then out of some sort of creative moment, there was an editing logging software called Scene Stealer. And the problem became is that I had an archivist who's a very talented archivist, and when I told her I wanted to index the whole transcript, she thought that I was being terribly wasteful, and why would I do that? So we sort of had a parting of the ways. But the thing is that, Virage is probably the most accepted medium out there. It's just terribly expensive. At what we have to process right now, it will cost $1.6 million, and even that there is labor involved, because it goes all back to this transcript, which even just proofreading, getting the transcripts correct is complicated. And I really full-heartedly thought at the beginning, someone had talked about this earlier, I thought that we would have retired librarians and school teachers lined up outside the building wanting to help. I take them in the room and they're like, you got anything else? So with that said, are you ready, Dr. Walker? Okay, great.
Okay, well, so you've seen another little lesson in technology. It's never quite what you expect. Yeah, so what I'm going to try and tell you about in the kind of 1 minute that we have left is about the broader task of, I shut the lights off, I can't see my notes, extracting knowledge. I can't even see my keyboard, actually. That's a sign of age, not technology. Okay, that's fine if you can just leave it that way. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is this very broad project of trying to extract knowledge from very large collections. And when I talk about extract knowledge, it really does, in fact, mean all aspects of knowledge and understanding. Now, the broader mission of the Infomedia project was to enable all kinds of search and discovery in the video medium. So back in the late 80s, just as our colleagues were really beginning to work very hard on text searching and the search engines began to appear, we took on the much more difficult problem of trying to be able to do the same kinds of search technology in video that they were doing in text. Part of the motivation for that is we realized that our society is not a society of people who read. We really do most of our learning visually. Through television, through movies. That's how we get our model of the world. So being able to put on glass screens all the text that used to exist in paper wouldn't have a large enough impact, particularly on the youth of our nation, unless we could also do the same thing in video and make video a medium that they both play in and learn in with equal fun and equal capability. So our mission became to do all of this in the video domain. Now, what that required was a fully automated process for this information extraction from the video. We couldn't have people sitting in front of it and annotating it and indexing it, simply because of the huge back collection that existed and the huge future collection that would be coming up with at much greater speed. And the other requirement that we had was that we wanted to achieve kind of full content retrieval from all spoken language and visual documents. Full content retrieval means being able to go inside an hour-long video and find the 2 minutes that's particularly relevant, or go inside 2 years of news and find the particular story or subset of a story that's important to you. So you have to have the full content available at all times in order to be able to do that. So the approach we took was really based on a quarter century of artificial intelligence technology that at Carnegie Mellon University and other leading institutions, in which they were all developed independently, and our approach was really to combine machine speech recognition, machine image, and machine natural language understanding, both to create the library and then for exploring the library. So that was sort of a technological approach that was, we call an integrated approach that focused future scientific work on a particular application. The real goal of the project, though, we wouldn't have success unless we were able to show that you could establish large video libraries as a really meaningful network searchable information resource. So that became the ultimate goal, not the intermediate technologies, but rather the endpoint of establishing the library. So because time is short, what I'm going to do is just try and show you a few examples of what we've done so far. And again, I'm just going to show a few capabilities. We can talk more offline about other possibilities. So what I've got on my laptop is CNN News from 2002 and the first half of 2003. So that's a year and a half of news. It's about 500 hours that actually sits encoded on my laptop. It's on hard disk. It's about 80 gigabytes. So this is the corpus I'm going to try and draw from and just show you what we can do with that kind of corpus. Now you have to remember that again we're using all these artificial intelligence techniques, and this corpus is totally done automatically, and you'll see some of the good, not so good results that come from that. Okay, so if you think about what would be interesting to ask about 2002 and 2003. Well, it's been a rough time in the last 18 months for the world. We've had and the nation. We've had a war in Afghanistan. We've had a war in Iraq. We've had a war with, of course, in Palestine. We've had certainly our wars with all the major companies and the corporate executives that have folded beneath us. So there are lots of wars going on. So an interesting kind of question you might ask that kind of crosses all of those kinds of activities is something about all the refugees that were created. So an interesting query might be about the refugees seeking asylum. So we searched the database and we quickly got close to 400 little stories or little clips that talk about it. And for each story, we automatically generate a headline based on usually what's contained in the first minute or so of the story. And as I go across them, these little headlines will show up. So you can see the first one is about the Haitian refugees, as is the second. This one is about the Kurdish refugees in Afghanistan. This one is likely about Iraqis, especially judging from the date. This one is Palestine, and so on and so forth. There are quite a few talking about the different areas. Let me just play the first one. Well, let's see. I guess perhaps what might be more interesting is this one, which is about Iraq. So let me play that.
And one part of this story, of course, is the humanitarian aspect. The United Nations Refugee Agency expects to handle some 600,000 Iraqi refugees, many of them from the Kurdish region in northern Iraq. Jane Araf is in the Kurdish-controlled city of Duhok with the very latest for us. Jane?
Well, Lou, we're already seeing a lot of those would-be potential refugees. As you mentioned, there are Kurds from the Kurdish-controlled territories, and they have been on the move for the past few days, moving from cities like this in Dohuk, where they have comfortable homes, to the freezing mountains. Now, you can imagine what it takes to send people from cities into places by the sides of the roads where they're sheltered often by nothing but plastic sheeting. It's absolute terror. They say they're afraid of a potential chemical attack. Now, authorities here are telling them they should go home, that things are safe, but hardly anyone is heeding that call. Now, Kurdish authorities are starting to build tent cities, but they're also appealing to international agencies to release some of the aid that they're holding in nearby countries for another wave of refugees. Now, those refugees would be from the rest of Iraq, and the reason we haven't seen those so far is very simple. Until the Iraqi government loses control of those checkpoints that separate the Kurdish north from the rest of the country, they won't be allowed to leave. Lou?
Okay, so what Julianne asked me to bring up was the transcript that's generated that you can follow along with. Now, for when you work with CNN News, some percentage of it has closed captioning. When you have closed captioning, you take advantage of that. You include it. You still have to go through speech recognition to align the closed captioning with the actual time that it's said in the video. So let's take a look at yes.
That voice recognition technology, can you use it instead of going through all the transcription business?
Yes, but it doesn't have the accuracy that one may want. So I can talk later about the alternatives for transcription, because even in the best cases, you'll get about a 20 to 30% word error rate.
Howard thinks that's acceptable.
Well,
yes, he thinks that's fine.
No, but
it's true.
But that's because even with a 30% word error rate, for retrieval purposes, you still get about 85 to 90% of the retrieval you would get if you had a perfect transcript. And that's because of the redundancy in human discourse. It's the way, just based on the way people talk. Let's see. As we look over this, we found some interesting ones more about the Turks. I don't know if you remember the issue with the Turks' participation in the war. Here's something about the Haitians, and also talks about African Americans. Let's see. So before I play the whole thing, I can also look at sort of a film strip view of it, and what it does is it points to where the words are mentioned in the video that we asked for in the queries. So it'll show me where those words are mentioned in here. So it talks about, if you can see it down in the corner, refugees over here. So I can start playing at this point.
African Americans as well as Haitian Americans are furious at the fact that these Haitian refugees are being turned away where Cuban refugees are allowed to stay because they're considered political and Haitian refugees are not. A lot of African Americans say this is pure racial discrimination, and they wonder, why don't President Bush and his brother say something about it? And the answer is maybe they're in thrall to Cuban American voters and to that constituency who do vote in large numbers and usually vote Republican. Then a lot of voters in Florida are just angry to see these boatloads of people suddenly washing up on their shores. When they look at refugees like that, they see welfare cases, they see...
So you get an additional little interesting tidbit there with respect to why the situation with the Haitians may have been that way. So one thing you can see from all this is that there are perhaps too many stories, and they're about very different kinds of things. I can't possibly come up with the most relevant refugee story because there are so many, and they're from all over the world over the whole 18 months that I have on the laptops. But we can do something else. We can visualize all the stories at the same time. So what we do is we take all the stories, and as we're analyzing them, we're also geo-encoding them. In other words, every time we see a place or hear a place mentioned, we find its latitude and longitude, and then keep a full index of what latitudes and longitudes correspond to what stories. So that means we can dynamically generate a map of what stories are what areas are covered by the series of stories. Now, as you can see, there are stories showing up all over the world over this entire year and a half. Let me just do a couple of things here and show you another couple of ways of looking at this. Now you can see over here we have the names of all the countries that show up. It's just totally scattered. I'm going to take out the United States. We didn't have too many U.S. refugees, and that was supposed to be funny. It really distorts the whole searching. And what happens is the U.S. is mentioned in just about every story, okay, because they're all it's CNN News. Most of them are reported from Atlanta, you know. So the U.S. is showing up in a lot of those stories, even though it's not particularly relevant to all the stories. So one of the things, so the color now indicates where the most relevant stories are, or where you get most of the hits. And I can move over to any story, and we can see on the lines down here, perhaps when a story. Let me see if I can leave that for a second. Okay, so that's Angola. There was one story, and you can see where in the year and a half it occurred. This is a timeline that represents that period from January 02 to the end of May in 03. But let me show you something really interesting we can do as long as we have it all encoded this way. We can move the date down from a year and a half down to something much smaller. Let's say we move it down to a period of what's this? This is like 3 weeks. Okay, we have something like 2 weeks or 10 days worth of content, and you can see where in what time that is. Now let me show you a couple of other things that are here. We have the people and organizations. So those are the people and organizations mentioned in the stories that are now visible in that little time slot. So the stories in that time slot occur in all of these countries, and these are the most frequently mentioned people and organizations in those stories. And now what I can do is take that 10-day period and move it along. And you can see the date changing, and you can see what happens on the map above, that the countries that are covered are changing, and also the people and organizations are changing. And so what you get is a sort of a view of the historical movement. Okay, so if I were working with a 10-year catalog here, you could see progressions in a particular topic or subject or movement over time. And of course, you don't have to look at such a. We use it came up with a world map on its own because it looked at the boundaries of all the stories. You can, of course, narrow down on any part and just look at the stories in that part of the world. Oops. Yes.
Also, if you're looking for particular stories, will you sort by all of those categories at once?
Yes. So you can see what's showing up as we. What was that about cell phones?
Sorry.
Well, her heart was in the right place.
Thank you.
Yeah. So another thing you can do, of course, if you have a map, is you can draw a box on a map and only look for stories in that area. I guess this is always a good area, a good part of the world to get stories. And then what you can do is look for details of only stories in that area. And so I now reduce it down to 157 stories, which all talk about refugees seeking asylum in Palestine and Israel and Egypt, whatever was covered by that little box. Now, when I'm talking about little boxes, something else you might notice is that there are little white boxes around, scattered throughout these things. So wherever we recognize that something is a face, we also record the faces and create a special index of faces and people, just like we do with organizations and places. So what can you do if you know you have a face? Well, you can take that face and then move that face into the query window, and then do a search for the occurrence of similar faces. Now this takes a little longer. There we go. So hopefully when you look at these, they're all Christian Amanpour from CNN. Looks like we did pretty well. Now this is not her, but this is again. So as you go further down, of course, the relevance or the accuracy decreases, and this little red bar gives you a sense of what we think are the most relevant ones. So that's something you can do even if you don't know the person's name. Okay, it's not based on their name; it's based on the facial imagery. Okay, I've got a minute more. All right. So that's enough about CNN news. Again, I can show you a great deal more. Let me just kind of move on to something else in the moment and take a look at some of what we did with history makers. Okay, so we have something like half a dozen interviews online. And what's particularly interesting for us is to see what kind of questions you can ask across them. So something that might be interesting to ask these people is about bigotry and racism, which you didn't make much of a point of during the interviews. They just kind of brought it up on their own. And so you can see who has something to say about that. Again, you can't tell too much from these titles, but you can easily play the story.
So I had built radios, at the age of 14, 15, built crystal radios.
Now the other thing I can do is we also marked in the story where those words occur, so I can kind of jump just to that point.
So I heard about this racism in the school. When I got in it, the teacher, never forget, her name was Miss Clausen. She got mad at me because I said 10 instead of 10, which I changed, but she said colored people say 10 instead of 10, and she promptly dropped that class. So we kept it. And there was a Jewish guy who was the president of it, and we would have do little radio plays, and we had equipment that we had a microphone and some speakers and turntables.
I'm going to jump
and racism all around me because you could feel it. It was in the headlines, It's been there for a long time. And occasionally I would experience it in these different groups. But
so something else we might do that crosses a number of them well is just looking for photos and pictures that they had.
As part of our process, starting with Julian Bond, we start asking people to bring 15 to 20 photos of themselves and narrate them. So that usually occurs at the end of the interview. That's what Professor Walker is referring to.
Okay, so again, you can see different people that had different things. So let me just kind of start playing from Eddie Thomas's collection.
Oh, okay.
Now again, I can manually move across it so we can get a sort of a quicker view of what's there and stop at any point that we want to hear what he has to say. So he's describing what these are. If you can read fast, you can read what's at the bottom.
So in
Okay.
these, you took our transcripts, right?
For some we had, for the first group, I don't think we did, the last group we did, yes.
Okay. So for the last group, did you use voice recognition, or you don't have it?
Yes, no, you
Okay.
still use voice recognition.
Okay.
Okay, this is a little interesting.
Things is unlimited, and what he's doing, his ability is just fantastic. Yeah, this is 1970. The great Dick Clark. Let me go back first of all. On the extreme left, let me describe each individual. On the extreme left is Fred Cash. He was the one that replaced Jerry Butler for the Impressions. Then yours truly, young Eddie Thomas. And then young Dick Clark here. He's never aged. He still looks almost the same as he does now. And next is Samuel Gooden, our bass singer. And then your master songwriter, the genius himself, Curtis Mayfield. We were backstage and we decided to take pictures so we could have it for our future references, memorabilia.
Now, this was where you said?
About 1970.
Backstage where you said?
Backstage at the Apollo Theater.
Okay.
This is our latest album called The Fabulous Impressions. You can see how young Dick Clark was. It looks like a teenager himself.
At one point I said, what is wrong with that man? I'm grown and he's still...
Yeah, he takes care of him.
Okay. I want to be sure you got that part of it. So, he is ageless, isn't he? So at any rate, this I just wanted to give you a sense of the kind of capabilities we have. Again, where we have a transcript, we still have to run the voice recognition so that we can align the words with we can synchronize it with the video. So it's always used. There are a number of techniques that one can be used to more effectively deal with the voice transcription difficulties. One technique says, well, it doesn't matter very much, okay, because for information retrieval, you're still going to get a pretty good result. You just won't have an exact transcript, and you're really supposed to be listening, not reading what they're saying anyway, so you don't need the perfect transcript. The problem is you may miss some important names or places that are mentioned that way. Another way to do transcription that's sort of only semi-technical, but kind of practical, is that instead of having somebody transcribe it as they listen to it, you can use mortals who can just listen to it and repeat what's being said, repeat it in their voice, for which speech recognizer is trained, and that speaker will have a close talking microphone. The fidelity will be wonderful, and thus the speech recognition system can generate an almost perfect transcript just because some individual is repeating in real time what's being said, or it doesn't matter if it's even off by a few seconds because again you run the recognition on it. Okay, we're getting the sign. We're over time. I can answer questions at lunch or during the break. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over for the rest of the day. Maurice's. Yes, one question, of course.
You're running on 3 platforms. You said speech,
Speech, language, understanding language, what words mean, and image.
what does that cost?
Well, he's no. What he says. This is the run. No, this is the run.
Independence and mobility. What's this? Respect for other nations' sovereignty. Technologies we don't know about yet. Global identity. Clean air. Time to reflect. Where's time? Free time. Okay. Religion. United Negro College Fund. I'm trying to find the whole. Thank you. Go ahead and we'll put those in here. Yeah. Okay. NAACP. Social service. What's that?
Business association.
Okay. What else is missing? Educational publishers. Educational institutions. We have plenty of those. Academic institutions, but I'll put that here. Business corporate foundations. Can anybody give some specifics on this? Think tanks. Senior military officers. Okay. I'm looking for examples of organizations.
You mean names
Specific,
or
yes,
just
specific
names or
organizations.
For funding or for
who would benefit from this?
Yes, yes. Well, this is with whom we're associated with. Right, I'm trying to see what holes are missing, what holes are there, I should say, as a result of seeing. Okay, I'm looking. Okay, pardon me. I'm looking for specifics. So here's an example of specific. National Bar Association. It means
Ones that's missing.
ones that are missing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That should be there.
Exactly. All right. National Medical Association. Okay.
No, because
All right.
to interview the leadership.
Jack and Jill of America.
Who were the presidents of the National Medical Association? Who's the president of the
Okay.
National Bar Association? You know, those groups should be.
All right. I'm going to have you all put these up. What's that?
We're thinking about organizations that are capable of benefiting from relationships.
Yes.
Or we're thinking about organizations that district makers would benefit.
It's both. It's both. Women's Treatment Center.
We're not
Okay.
thinking necessarily of that.
Deltas, yeah. I'm sorry. We're not necessarily thinking what?
Are we thinking primarily financially?
I would like more financial organizations. Okay? AFL-CIO.
Is to try to figure out entities that we could go to, that we could make an
Introduce to you.
argument that they would benefit from this. Like you could go to the AFL-CIO, you could go to labor. Right, yeah.
The black.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right. I'm going to go to lunch now. Okay.
For example, the military.
All right.
Big supporter of affirmative action cases.
Okay, pardon me. This is what I like to do before we go to lunch.
They do marketing.
I just like everybody to take a moment and walk the board. Don't get up just yet, but take a moment, walk the board, look at these organizations. And the real question for lunch, there are two questions for lunch. Here you go. We're trying to map out our relationships with other organizations.
I know, I just know there's somebody that does.
We're trying to develop the value proposition for the history makers for these organizations from how they might be able to support us. Okay? So what I really want you to think about for us beginning the discussion after lunch is how our relationship, how we can shape a value proposition for these relationships and how we can build, how we can make best use of our connectedness to these relationships for building funding for the History Makers Project. Yes.
I wonder if it would be helpful for us to think, perhaps over lunch, prototypes
Okay.
that can serve as, serve as prototypes.
Sure.
It makes no sense to reinvent the wheel. One thing that comes to mind is the Negro College Fund,
Okay.
which kind of recalibrated national thinking about the importance of intellectual development in the black community and how that might be connected to the society at large.
Okay. Okay. All right, go ahead. So at this point, let's get ready to, there's some announcements. Go ahead, please.
I have a few announcements.
Yeah.
I know we have a lot to digest over lunch, so please think of this as a process, an
Yes.
ongoing process that we're going to refine together as a group as we move forward. Before you leave this room, and lunch is going to be served right next door here in Salon Ames, where breakfast was this morning. 3 announcements. The first is we are seeking federal appropriations for the History Makers. We currently have, it's a process that we've engaged in. Is it Bobby Rush? Okay, and so we're asking you all, please, to contact the appropriate people that can help us move this along. We have some samples of a letter that you can send and the fax numbers and addresses where you can send them to. And so if you'd collect that at the door as you go out into the lunchroom, that would be fabulous. Can you hand these out at the door? Crystal's going to be handing those out at the door. The other thing is, I lied, there's 4. There's a concession stand. It's closing at 2. That's what I was told to tell you all. The next thing is we're trying to get some photos together of the individual groups. So if the members of the National Advisory Board would not leave this room until a photo is taken of them, that would be wonderful. We promise we'll get you fed. We'll make it fast. And then after lunch, the scholar consultants, if you would not leave the lunchroom until the photo of you is taken, and that will be organized, we'll make it quick. So with your cooperation, we can do that.
We're going to re-adjourn at 1:30. Yeah, back to this room at 1:30. What's that? Yes, it's absolutely right.
You know, I just want to make a little observation here. You're talking about the federal government, and every organization in the world, I mean in America, is after the federal government for funds. And the only way you're going to get funds from the federal government is to have a strong lobbyist that works the federal government. I mean, for us to write individual letters or whatever is a waste of time. So far as who are you going to write, your senator? I mean, you know, you got to be realistic in this approach. And it's, to me, I mean, I'm involved in raising money for so many organizations, it's not even funny. But if you're going to go to the federal government, you better have somebody in Washington to understand the rules and regulations.
Clarence, we've hired the largest lobbyists. We've hired the largest lobbyists in Washington, D.C., Patton Boggs. This was just at their request that everyone on our board send in letters, as part of the process. Yes, Patton Boggs. And Tony Cook Bush, who's one of our board members, has actually been to several visits on the Hill.
Okay, let's break for.
Actually, Julianne, if I could just say, on the legislative issue, if there is anybody that wants to do more than just send a letter, if you could let me know, I'd be happy to talk to you about specifics about what we're doing and how you can help in that effort. But we do have a plan. We do have members of Congress who have indicated a willingness to take a lead on this effort for us. But one of the things that we do need is to, show that we have a broad base of support. So I'd be happy to talk to anybody else more specifically about what we're doing.
Are you?
Right.
Feel that I would feel more secure about it and understanding and placing it in some market context.
Okay.
Maybe what the thing to do is that at some point Julianne will tell me that you have 10 minutes and I can walk through what we're doing, specifically what we're requesting. Well, I mean, everybody's hungry. I hate to be like the thing between everybody at lunch. Well, specifically what we've done is we put in a request for $2 million to the Labor HHS Appropriations Committee. It was submitted by Congressman Rush. We have targeted members of the appropriation committees who are the people that you see on this list. I can circulate, or Juliana can circulate to people the actual request that we submitted. But in addition to that, we are meeting with other members to see if there are other opportunities in the appropriations process that might work for us. And the appropriations process, Clarence, you're right, is a very difficult process, but it is a process through which organizations are often successful in doing that. And so we are, making a serious effort to try to go after that. And we are fortunate that Congressman Rush is on the Appropriations Committee and has indicated a willingness to lead the charge for us on the issue. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
Yeah, you're right.
I think this is an excellent idea. I think we all should go back to our home states and organize our constituencies. For me, my constituencies are students. We can talk to our students about this. We can encourage them to go out and talk to their communities, to their relatives. I think the more, if we have church groups, we should have the preachers have their congregations, send letters in. I think we all need to get on the bandwagon and try to make this happen.
Is there a day, or are you planning on setting up a day that maybe some of the members of the board, both the advisory board and the regular board, can go up on the Hill? I'm relatively familiar with the process also, and it's no one thing that happens, and in a lot of instances, numbers means a lot on the Hill, especially when you have people in, at that level going to different members and speaking on behalf of this appropriation.
I think that's a very good idea, and that was in fact one of the things that I was going to, a very good idea, and one of the things that I was going to talk about at our next board meeting is organize. Now that we have a member who said that he wants to do this, and we have something for everybody to focus on and go in and talk about specifically, that's a good idea.
Right,
to
and the lobbyists can set those meetings up. And,
right, to be able to pick a day that people can come in and go around.
And I think you should try to get some members of the advisory board to come up also.
Okay, thank you.
Are
you asking if these letters be sent to these people or sent to our congressmen?
Our first priority are those people on the list. In addition, it would be helpful if you sent that letter to your our first priority are those people on the list, but in addition, it would be helpful if that letter went to your congressman or senator. If you're willing to send it, we would appreciate that. And the other key is that when you send the letter, that you copy us so that we know who has had letters go in from who.
So the objective probably is the amount is so small as to get stuck on some other bill.
Right.
We're sending a letter to my because if he's not on this committee.
Well, but he could, if he really members who really care about it, can work with other members to get that going. It all depends on who it is. If, your member happens to be, Ted Stevens or Senator Inouye or Robert Byrd, then that makes a real big difference because they're, de facto on all the committees. So I think that it never hurts to send it to everybody because sometimes you do generate interest, but those are the specific people we're really targeting. Labor agency. It has been submitted as a request for the labor agency.
All right, well, the first thing we do when we come back is to the committee, with the committee.
Yeah, the budget.
Get straight.
Right.
Just one. Just one other thing. Does anybody know Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina? Okay, I would say one thing, we should include him, and I had a meeting with him a couple of weeks ago. Currently, Congressman Clyburn, I would say, is the most powerful black politician in America. And the reason why he is because South Carolina is running the process for one of the few states whose geography accurately reflects the composition of America as a primary, as opposed to New Hampshire, et cetera. And every single Democratic candidate for the President of the United States has to pass through Congressman Clyburn. And in fact, Congressman Clyburn, if you look, just a week ago, just put a rider on a bill, exactly what you're talking about, for $50 million to benefit black colleges to improve them. So I would say that the key to this thing now, right now, while he's in that position, would be Congressman Clyburn.
And we appreciate any of your help you want to give us with him. Yeah.
Is there a deadline on this letter?
Oh,
Well, sooner rather than later.
A week, a month?
3 weeks. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, we're going to go ahead and break for lunch. I just want everybody just to take a peek at the board and then go into the room A, which is the one right behind you. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what commitments we're prepared to bring to the history makers, what resources you can bring to bear. Okay? All right, thank you.
That is a fabulous idea.
I know.
If the National Advisory Board could meet with me so we could, so I can gather you around for your photograph. And also, I'm looking for a list of potential history makers too. So if you have any list or any ideas of people who we should contact for interviews, if you can just give those to me. And then also I'll be circulating that list around of all the history makers who we do have on our list. Thank you.
What's in it for them?
Really care about what's in it for them. And you can talk about all the wonderful things that you want to, but in the end, what are they going to get out of it? That is really the key. I think all fundraising and everything else.
No, it's true.
Well, they'll give lip service and say it's wonderful.
That's right.
Somehow, either implied or directly, you got to address what's in it for them.